Hey guys, how are you doing? My name is Taku David, and this is the Mentrd podcast, the podcast where we speak to interesting minds around the world who offer their advice, their experience, and a bit of insights into the trends that are taking this world by storm. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Carlos Gutierrez, and I don't want to mess anything up because I've got a doctor in the house today. So let's let him introduce himself and just give us a little bit of an introduction into what he's about, what he does, where he works, and what his background is. Carlos, thank you for being on the program today.
No. Thank you so much for the invitation, Taku. It's great to meet you and the people that you have a community with. As you said, my name is Carlos. I work at Google. I'm a policy lead creating internal policies for products such as agents and other products related to Google Labs. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But whatever I do say, it is not a representation of official Google stance or official Google policy. It is personal opinions.
Okay, thanks for the terms and conditions because I never read those when Google sends them to me, which is probably something that I should do because I understand that your work is generally in the policy field and sort of defining the policy for what in a very virgin ground, which is AI policy. Tell us a little bit about what AI policy is, what is sort of the methodology or the thinking around that, and why it's important for us to actually read the tiny T's and C's when we agree or consent to one of your notifications or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for
From any browser, really.
That's, I think, a really great question. When we talk about AI policy, we can think about it in two ways. The first thing that most people think about policy is law and what laws are being created and what laws are being enforced by governments. And these are things that are very slow to be created. It takes years upon years to create any sort of law, and that's why in many occasions we see the law being very slow to catch up to society. So, in terms of AI, there's a couple of jurisdictions that have tried to attack this problem, such as the EU and other jurisdictions that have created AI policy, official AI policy. So, if any product comes out, these things have to be followed. On the other side of AI policy are internal guidelines or industry standards that do not require passing a Congress or do not require passing through executive approval of a president, but anybody can create them if you'd like. You and I, Taku, can create our AI principles of how it should be used in our personal universe. We could create those, and that exists under the term of self-law. And because at Google there's constant creation of new types of products, of new types of ideas, last week we launched an agentic product called Project Mariner. And Project Mariner essentially is a product that allows individuals to use up to 10 agents to perform tasks on a browser. So for that, there is no law. There's no law per se. There are laws on illegal behavior. So buying fentanyl is illegal in the United States and in many jurisdictions. Buying fentanyl with an AI agent is illegal as well. Using an AI agent and in the very diverse and complex ways one can use an agent, that is not covered by any law. So internally at Google, we create the guidelines for what is the appropriate and what is the inappropriate way for these products to be taken. And that's the kind of stuff that I do.
Thank you for that background. And this was a question that I probably wanted to get later on to get to later on in the discussion. But for me, so who are the police in the room? Where does the buck start and end with? Is it the governing bodies? Is it the government itself? Are they private companies like Google? Is it me as a parent in a home and monitoring what my kid is doing? Who really polices the system, and who has the keys to turn it on and off?
So there are many keys, and I think I really like your analogy about the keys, but there's many keys. For instance, to enter your house, only a couple people have that keys. Maybe a family member, maybe your kids, maybe your partner, maybe a friend. You limit those keys. Once you're inside a house, you might have a safe and less people will have that keys. Or inside of your home, you may have several electronic devices that are protected by passwords, and less people have visibility over those keys. So I really like your division of how we're thinking about security and who has access to what. So, for instance, for things that kids have access to, I think the first level of regulation of policy has to be the parents. Are the parents going to allow kids to have cell phones when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? And are they going to be by themselves when they look at these devices? Because if you give a kid a browser, they can do a
That's right.
variety of things. Like, for instance, I made the mistake when I was very young when I went to whitehouse.com instead of whitehouse.gov. And that's a pornographic site where lots of kids unfortunately enter, and that's something. It's a mistake. It's an honest mistake. But then there's malicious use of the internet by individuals that are under 13 or under 18. And how do you police that? So parents are first, but if parents have given their kids permission to do this, then the safeguards are either with government on what is prohibited for an individual under the age of 18 or under the age of 13, or on a site like our own. We have tons of services that are available to people over 13, but we also have several services that are not. And the only way that we can reassure ourselves who is the person looking at this content is when they create their Google account, we need your date of birth and we need to verify who you are. And that is the only way that we can know who our audience is. And based on that audience, we calibrate content in the same way. Like, for instance, if you use YouTube, because we're adults, Taku, we probably don't realize this, and neither one of us have kids. But there is a YouTube Kids World, and in that YouTube Kids World, there's a lot of content restrictions. Kids are not shown the full spectrum of ideas or images that are available to both you and I. And those are the different filters that we have. Are they effective? They can always improve. We're always improving. We're always thinking, what is the best way to limit exposure of things that we don't want kids to do? But then there's also long-term impacts. Like, for instance, many of your listeners might have a digital assistant. This could be Siri, it could be Alexa, it could be Gemini. And in the vast majority of these digital assistants, you'll notice that most voices are female. And there's a reason for this. Female voices are endearing, they're caring. For males, they are less confrontational, less competitive. But it is worthy of study what effect can have on children the usage of those female voices. Not just thinking about it in the most meaningful of ways. Will young male kids think of individuals with female voices as people that are extremely smart? Because at any moment when you ask Alexa, Siri, or Gemini something, they'll give you an answer, and in most
Yeah.
cases, it will be the right answer. And in some cases, it'll give you the wrong answer. But will they think of individuals with female voices as extremely smart, or will they think of individuals with female voices as individuals that need to comply with orders? Why? Because with Siri, Alexa, and Gemini, we tell them to do things. Turn the volume up. Tell me this information. There's no space to disagree. It is a
Mm.
hierarchy. I give a command, I get a response, or I get an action back. So these are open questions that we haven't figured out yet. We need to study them. But in any context now, you can change the gender of the voice, or you can have a robot as or an asexual voice to these assistants. But we're always learning, and there's no right answer to what is the best way to do something. It's our best
Yeah.
approach.
We're grateful that there are responsible companies that are involved in this process. My question really comes more to, you've got your Googles, you've got your OpenAIs, you've got your DeepSeeks, you've got all of these formalized structures, which of course have to follow some type of policy guidelines. But how do we deal? Is there any way to deal with the nefarious players on the web who create their own AIs that are able to do, for example, order fentanyl through an AI agent online? Are there any structures that are able to identify and police that, um, nationally, internationally? Is there an AI force at this point, or is there work towards getting to that point?
Well, there are efforts, and definitely law enforcement and national bodies have jurisdiction over that. I mean, if you're trying to commit a crime in the United States and you live in Asia, then you might as well be unenforceable. But is there a global police to this? No. Interpol is as close as we get. We are. It is an evolving landscape. But it really depends on the how companies such as my own, such as other competitors, such as OpenAI, how they relate to national bodies in order to take down all the deep fakes, all the criminal orgs that are scamming elderly individuals using LLMs. There is there is a new trend called pick butchering, which is super interesting, where individuals receive text messages and it is a relationship building effort. And once the relationship is there, then the user or the person that wants to be scammed, that will be scammed, is asked to do cryptocurrency trades or purchase gift cards, etc., etc., etc. And unfortunately, AI, as much as it is a force for good, it can't be used for evil.
Wow. Well, that's super interesting. We've got a lot of listeners. A lot of our listeners will be people in the business space, will be entrepreneurs, will be creatives. And like myself, I'm sure and this is me assuming that most people understand who have worked with AI over the last 2, 3 years. Like myself, I interact a lot with AI systems, whether it's your Claudes, your Googles, your DeepSeeks, whatever it is. And I reached a point where I had to ask AI, when I give you my ideas to iterate on and improve, does that still belong to me, or can AI companies use my ideas legally?
Yeah, this is a hotly contested debate, and it is based on jurisdiction by jurisdiction regulation. In the U.S., I think this is correct. In the U.S., nothing that is created by an AI can be copyrighted or patented. So if you create something with AI, in theory, it would go into the public domain, and nobody's the owner for it. Now, there are levels to this. If you integrate an image and to the extent that it's really your image and you're creating it with AI as a small element of it, then you could have a case that that image is yours. But if you text prompt, hey, um, create a picture of a very handsome, half Mexican, half Colombian individual, and something comes out that looks very much like me. Um, that's not yours. It's yours in that you can use it. It's yours in that you can exploit it commercially, but in as much as you created it, it's a shared creation, and it's the AI doing all the magic there, and it'd be very difficult to register or protect.
I like the wording you use there, because I feel like that's a veil, that it's you and the AI. It's not really me and the AI. It's me and the parent company of the AI, is it not?
Yeah, agree. Yes,
Okay.
and it'd be interesting for your listeners to go into different services and to test the permissiveness of those services, because they're all very different in terms of, hey, if you ask one service to create one type of image, and you can go as far as you want, and you compare it to other services, they all have different guidelines. So there's no universality here in what Gemini allows, what ChatGPT allows, what DeepSeek allows, what Grok allows. They're all very, very different. And, consumers are free to choose what they want, and what a brand is willing to give them is their own limits. Like, for instance, you could for sure find software that would allow you to create deep fakes, and there's a customer base for that. Google is unlikely to create software, in at least I think, that will allow for pornographic deepfakes that can be uh, published throughout the internet, just because we have a brand and we want to protect our users, and there are some limits to what should or could be done, but there are other companies that don't have those guidelines or don't have those shields.
Again, I love to work with the words that you throw at me. Should be done and could be done.
Yeah,
I think this is the sort of the philosophical argument behind AI and the advancement of technology. Could be done, yes. Should it be done? Not so sure. And there's lots of debates. I've been reading a lot of literature lately on what happens to value and employment after the advent of AI. And recently, I guess AI agents are the big thing in town, right? AI agents are replacing everyone's jobs. So give us a little bit of more insight into sort of what are AI agents, just for the layman. What are AI agents, and what opportunities do they present? At the same time, what risks do they present for everyone?
yeah. Just touching a little bit on your point on jobs, that is, we have history as a analog, and we've gone through several revolutions. We've gone through the agricultural revolution, we've gone through the industrial revolution, we've gone through the computer revolution, and according to the OECD, in those revolutions, in the first generation, jobs were lost. They were. An individual that was studying to be a telegrapher lost their job to the phone. An individual that was plowing the fields lost their job to farming equipment. And there are losses in those jobs, but there are other jobs that are being created. And in the net, in the past, it has always been a net positive. Now, here there is a big question for AI in terms of how fast can we adopt to those new jobs, and how fast is that job creation being enabled by this new technology? That is a completely open question, and we don't have answers for that. But in terms of AI agents, we do not have a definition of AI agents right now. If you look on the internet, you will find thousands of companies that have agent products available for you. There's a variety of them. There's even one that I really like because it's called Dental Flow. And it's an AI agent for dental offices and communication with patients. In any case, anything and everything under the sun could be an agent. Now, the types of agents that I'm referring to when I talk about agents are agents that can interact with graphical user interfaces. What does that mean? Agents that can interact with the things that are in the screen, and that can understand what is happening in the screen, understand what is a button, what is not a button, what when it says something is for sale, what does that mean? When there's an image of stocks, when there's an image of anything, it can understand what that is. They can interpret that well. When you go into Mariner, you can ask it, hey Mariner, which is Google's product, I want to go from London to Singapore on these dates, and I want to prioritize how direct the route is, and I also want it to be very cheap. It goes to a website, it tries to find tickets, and it has to understand, well, where do I put London? Where do I put Singapore? Where do I put the dates that my user requested? All of this is finding out milestones within a website and how to surpass those milestones. Those are the kinds of agents that I try to deal with and try to understand and mitigate the potential risks. Now, Those are the most complicated of agents. Why? Because they need to be able to understand a completely unknown world and dynamic world, such as websites. The Expedia website can be one way today. It can change in a week. It can change in two. I can't um, take time to train my agent to understand all the changes of an Expedia site. No, it has to understand what is there in the same way that when you go to Expedia Taku and the interface changes, there's still a couple cues that you understand. There's a from, there's a to, there's a date from when to when, and these are the same cues that we try to train product in so that it understands whatever the user wants. Now, it's not an easy process. It's not something that every company can do. There's only a few companies out there that have agents. There is OpenAI. They have their agent. Claude has their agent. We have, but then there's also a couple of ones, and I think it's highly competitive world. Um, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. Um, let's see what happens. But I represent, just by where I'm from, I represent a constituency of young Africans, so to speak. Young meaning, I would say anyone who's 40 and below would be considered as a young African, really, in our context. And this is already a population that is highly unemployed, have managed, regardless of the shortcomings of our governments or the environmental challenges we faced, have managed to start building a solid educational base in the conventional manner. And once we've been able to succeed in this game, the rules of the game are massively changing on us. So, in terms of AI policy, has there been any consideration to the adverse effects of AI on communities, which either, for their own reasons or reasons that are beyond them, will not be able to compete in this new dispensation?
Are you thinking about any particular adverse effects that would be the most pivotal?
Unemployment.
Unemployment? Because, for
Yeah.
instance,
So, for
I
example, like in Africa now, we've got business process outsourcing is huge in Africa. It's huge in India. It's huge in Latin America. Those are jobs all gone
yeah,
within the next 5 years due
yeah.
to the technological advancements. So, how do we mitigate against some of those risks? Does it mean that maybe some of the big players have to contribute to additional education in these types of regions to upskill individuals? Are these conversations being had?
Well, I am not privy to those conversations, and I think it's incredibly important to think about individuals below the ages of 40 and their needs. What I can tell you is that these tools have created an environment where there's less friction to produce high value added content. Like, for instance, we have a product that just came out last week. It's called Flow in VO3. Using text prompts, individuals can essentially create a realistic movie where no budget on people, location, and equipment is necessary. Anybody can be a creator now. Anybody can create their own movie and they can create their own concept. There were these capital disadvantages that even if you wanted to create a YouTube video, you needed significant amounts of money and resources. You needed to buy a camera, you needed to do all these things. But now with your cell phone and with these products, the friction has gone incredibly down. We have a product called Notebook LM, where individuals can create podcasts out of nothing, literally just inputting documents and create a podcast that is educational in nature and almost replacing the conversation that you and I are having. So I agree that there's a significant amount of limitations and factors that affect individuals, but there are also significant opportunities in decreasing the friction and creating outlets that can be sold and can be used to improve the livelihoods of individuals, not only in the United States, but also young Africans such as yourself that are using the creative industries as an outlet.
I love that. I always play devil's advocate, so forgive me. Nothing
Oh,
against you guys as tech professionals. But two questions. One, if everyone can do it now, the barriers of entries have been greatly reduced. So the skill level needed to do anything, for let's use graphic design for example, the skill level that you need to be a graphic designer has massively gone down. I can speak to my chat GPT now and it will spit out whatever flyer or poster or design that I want, right? So that reduces competition, right? So how do businesses thrive or survive in this kind of arena where if you come up with a novel idea today, tomorrow 100 people can quickly copy this idea? That's my first question. And my second question is, if a large number of people in the short to medium term are not employed, who's going to buy these products? So
Yeah.
this is sort of my thinking, and I don't necessarily need an answer from you, but maybe just to weigh in on that, that thought pattern. What do you
Yeah.
think of that?
In terms of competition, I'm for that. I am for increased competition. If you're producing something and there's 100 other people producing it and you are the best one, I am hoping that you get the best that people recognize you. I mean what I think is important about these tools is that we want to destroy the ability of somebody saying, "Oh, I'm the one that has this best camera and only I can do this." What happens when Taku, who doesn't need to have that camera, produces a far superior product and at a cheaper cost? People are gonna go directly to you instead of to established players. And I think the increase of competition will allow individuals from other parts of the world that have never competed with in jurisdictions such as the US and Latin America. Like, for instance, having a person from the Philippines provide their services to people in Mexico, or somebody from Zimbabwe provide their services to people in Europe or the US. That freedom to compete, I think, is extremely valuable, and I would encourage it. If you're producing something that 100 people are producing exactly the same, it means potentially that it is not taking that much effort or expertise to produce. So, in order to stand out, we need to increase the mastery of whatever we're doing so that we can stand out somehow. Because this is something that is happening in education as well. Essay levels are increasing. People are writing excellent essays, but students are not reading what they're writing because they're just asking LLMs to create their essays and not actually learning the material. In the end, what's going to potentially happen is we're going to have graduates that, yes, produced a gargantuan amount of work, but have no idea how to write without these LLMs. And do we want individuals that don't know how to write by themselves? This is a critical problem that at least your generation and my generation has less of, because when we read whatever output ChatGPT produces, we could say, "Oh my goodness, all these adverbs or nouns or adjectives. This is like too much fluff, or it's not going directly to the point." But eventually, what we're gonna have is kids that have no idea how to deal with this fluffiness because they will never have written on their own. In the second part of your question, I think it's incredibly important to consider that we don't have a global central government. Uh, there's no checks and balances at the global level with how to mitigate the risks of AI. I think that as much as large companies such as the one I work with try their best to create the best conditions, there will be mistakes. And there have been mistakes in the past. And all that we can try to do and all the work that we do internally, I work with a huge team that we create policy, we test it, we red team it, we go through all these channels to try to create the best product possible. But then we're faced with hundreds of millions, and in some cases billions of users that think of imaginative ways that us as a team have never thought of. And we learn constantly from users about the things that we should cover and the things that could improve in our products. And it's a race. It's a race to try to make the things that we create as safe as possible.
Thank you so much, Carlos. We're running short on our time now, but before we leave, everyone's watched The Terminator, right? And I think when people think of AI as this boogeyman, everyone's got The Terminator in mind, right? What is singularity?
So okay, Terminator and then Singularity. I think it is very difficult to have a Terminator scenario just because robotics are super difficult. They're super, super difficult. Trying to create a human body in the way as efficient as we are in terms of the small amount of calorie intake that we need to actually perform all the tasks that we do, that is an incredibly difficult problem. Now, if you're thinking about future scenarios where technology takes over humanity, I think the worst kind of potential scenario, and this is just a personal opinion, is a scenario where um, no physical actuation is necessary, but one where we are convinced to do things unbeknownst to ourselves. So where we're controlled through, think of it as marketing times 10. The objective of marketing is for you to buy a product. And it is episodic. I mean, sometimes you see commercials, sometimes you see banners, sometimes you see things everywhere. But what if the technology that you're thinking about that will take over the world is an AI system that knows everything that you do, knows every thought that you think of, and can say on a personal level, well, you know what? I want society to make these decisions. And if you know every single person and you know what they like and what they dislike, then you can mold them step by step. And there's no need to subjugate physically or to say, "Hey, Taku, I'm gonna kill you if you don't do what I want you to do." No, it'd be much easier to just convince you that you have free will and that you're doing this out of your own volition. That would be the scariest of the scariest futures.
Dystopian kind of future. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we see a time where perhaps AIs would have rights? Is that something that might be in our futures?
So there are instances of non-human entities having particular rights, and this happens a lot in the United States, where, for instance, companies have rights. Companies have the right to freedom of speech, and those were rights that were only given to humans or companies can serve as agents of humans. So I don't, right now, AI systems do not have rights, but at least in the orthodox sense. But one can think of scenarios where, since companies have the possibility of attaining rights or of personhood as a corporate entity of generating transactions, one can think of AI having access to those rights as well in a not so distant future as a non-human entity.
Wow. Carlos, thank you so much for letting us tap into your mind and a little bit into your world, the world of AI. And for anyone who's interested in following up on you, maybe finding out a little bit more about your work, where can they find you? On your LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is the one here below. Happy to interact with people.
Splendid. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, this has been the Mentrd podcast, and you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook at Mentrd Online, or you can visit us at www.mentrd.online, where we have a host of consultants, coaches, and advisors who are there to give you access to a host of information that will equip you and prepare you for this modern world we're living in. Carlos, thank you. Ciao.
Ichikaku.
Okay, I stopped.